We're so good, we do it twice.
Yeah.
Welcome to our Hatchery Live. I'm Jose Leal with my partner, Matt Perez. I'm sitting here. I just arrived. I'm starving and tired from flying. Boy, do my arms hurt. Um, Landed in Lisbon just an hour or so ago. And today we've got Timothy Kaczynski. Welcome, Timothy. So tell us a little bit about yourself, first about you, and then we'll get into Oxtail Labs and what you're doing and facing ourselves and what that means.
Hey,
Welcome.
good to go. Thank you for having me. So yeah, diving straight into it. I started out a career in IT straight out of high school when I joined the Marine Corps. Served there for about 5 years and found myself into defense contracting and working through various IT challenges. Um, that's culminated in the founding of Oxtail Labs. We've found that there are a series of different issues within the DoD, primarily when it comes to culture, procedures, and then technical processes for carrying out missions as a whole. Um, so I think that actually has a lot of you know what what I mean with facing ourselves. Um, I could jump right into that if you'd like.
No, I want to know a little bit more about you because what you just
Sure.
said sounds interesting. So, um, what got you into the military? Number one, and two, it sounds like maybe you're more on the technical side of things of military operations. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. Um, the the largest like deciding factor for me to go into the military and Marine Corps, um, one was that it seems like that was the beginning of many people going to college and not necessarily getting a guarantee of a job afterward. And also when a lot of the debt for college started to really grow if you did want to pursue that period. And the military seems like a viable alternative. And I would consider myself very patriotic as well. So it kind of went hand in hand. I had a problem, there was a solution. I could, find my calling, and went right after that.
Awesome. And the technical stuff, like what was your thing?
When I entered into the Marine Corps, I was a 2651, which is a systems integrator and communicator. We span the gambit on the TSSCI side, like the classified side for communications and intelligence-based communications. So it was working with radios and SATCOM and cryptologic gear and servers and networking equipment, the whole nine yards. A real jack of all trades, master of some.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm getting it. It sounds like a from your personal perspective, you were like, I want to do this stuff, and the best place to do it, not having to go to college and pay for it and all of that, is the Marines. And then you started thinking more about, well, how are we organized over here? How do we do all of this stuff? And maybe that leads us to our topic today. Is
Oh
that a
yeah,
fair way to put it?
oh yeah, I think you nailed it. My time in the Marine Corps was very technical facing, and that was kind of like the start of noticing many of these challenges. And it wasn't until pretty well into my time as a contractor where I really noticed many of the technical problems that we had were systemic,
Right.
and the result of many different you know problems.
So,
And
but
and we're
did you go through the training for Marine Corps
Yeah.
types?
Oh yeah. The general way it works is you aren't assigned a job as soon as you enlist. You're assigned like a grouping of jobs. Like you may fall into, I don't know, a certain cluster of jobs. And it's the same for everyone. You do boot camp, you do MCT, Marine Combat Training, or the infantry equivalent, which is escaping my mind right now. And then you have follow-on training for the job itself, whatever it is that you've been assigned.
Great.
Awesome.
I'll
So-
make sure to never piss you off. So
No. I'm a warrior in a garden. I can't.
So now you're finding some problems. You're seeing that they're systemic in nature,
Mhm.
and that leads you to start thinking about what?
Well, there, as a whole, there in IT right now, many different organizations are looking to implement Agile and DevOps, or DevSecOps, if that's the word people choose to use. And the both of those things have three qualities to them. You have the cultural side, the procedural side, and then the technical side. If you're missing one of those, you're going to have an extremely difficult time implementing Agile and DevOps. And ultimately, the whole reason for implementing those things is to be able to deliver value. And that value may be like mission accomplishment, or it may be, ensuring things move smoothly in a certain regard with the military, or one of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And far, 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 far too often, you find contracts where they focus purely on the technical and completely eschew the cultural and procedural, and then you end up with a failed program, or a program that leads to embarrassment, or any other range of negatives that result from a contract not performing well.
yeah,
And so your focus on the cultural and procedural led you to understanding that really all about the people.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. I heard this adage from my leadership when I was in the Marine Corps, where the longer you are a systems engineer, the more likely it is you will become a developer. And that ended up being prophetic for me. I went from systems engineering into doing systems engineering as code. Um, and then I'd say that there's a second part to that. The longer that you are a developer, the more likely it is you're going to become a psychologist, whether it's armchair or whatever. But yeah, it is very, very much people centric in order to have objectives go well and deliver value.
And so what's your lesson there? Like how, Agile itself, and Matt and I, you've probably heard maybe some of our interviews, but, Agile as we see it is, the idea is great. The implementation is either non-existent or, in some cases, the opposite of what it should be.
yeah.
What's your sense of it?
Um, so as a whole, like where can I like start with that? And I think, and answering myself, I'm sorry. I think about an organization that's brand new, fresh, right out the box. You just happen to have like a team of 10 people or what have you. The first thing that you really want to establish is like, how are you going to get that work done day to day? And that's kind of like my definition of culture as a whole. It's not ping pong tables in the office, although that is nice. It is very much about the smooth flow of work. So coming together with that group of people and setting like different ideas and tenets and practices that you would like to have. I feel like that's vital when you start doing this, and having a discussion behind like, what would you like from work every day? How would you like the work to be done? How would you like to be treated at work? Things of that nature. um, and also, to some degree, you may have to be very you know open and aware of the people that you are talking to. um, One of the primary things that I've seen, and kind of getting into more of a sense of what I wanted to speak to specifically, you find a lot of developers and engineers and other people that are high performers have a significant amount of trauma. And there was a study published not too long ago where it was something to the tune of 75% of high performers, high achievers, regardless of industry, have experienced some form of trauma in their past. And, you know, if you're people who are doing the best work, the most work, are, in this state, how do you support them? How do you really support them? If just sending them off to a mindfulness lesson may not be great, but, you know, opening up the floor and having better communication, more frequent communication, more candid communication, dropping some of the, I don't know, uh, dropping some of the platitudes and, cultural things that don't necessarily make sense.
Would it be fair to say digging deeper?
Yeah, like avoiding being passive aggressive. That there are some companies that are going for like a no drama approach to their communication, and like defining that word for word what that means. I think GitLab is an excellent example of that. They have an entire handbook that's free online for anyone to read over how to do like communication and collaboration and digging deeper like that.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the organization you said? That handbook?
That is GitLab.
GitLab. Okay.
Yeah. Overall, GitLab has been amazing for figuring out a really good place to start with culture and communication. And there's the technical side as well, but as far as the culture and process goes, I've been hard pressed to find another that has information available like that. And then digging into psychology articles showing like why this certain thing works, why this other thing doesn't work. The one that comes to mind right now is the concept of having short toes, where people say like, "Oh, I don't want to step on your toes." It's a reference to that. Keep short toes. If somebody is doing a piece of work, let them. Why is it such a problem if someone is trying to add value and collaborate, and it just happens to like do some of your work? Isn't that a bonus? Or is there like an ego component tied to that, and that person quote unquote stepping on your toes is making you feel bad or insecure? And that's where we have to get deeper. A lot of people walk through life with different insecurities that they haven't faced. Many people aren't ready to face them, and that's totally fine. And it's not a judgment call on that particular human being. But it's still there, and we need to work with those people and around those people, in the sense of like I don't know, working with them, not trying to like subvert them or something gross like that,
or manage them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which often that's the goal of management, is not to actually work with people, but to actually manage people. And
exactly.
I know that I've certainly played a role in that in my past career. So Timothy, one of the things that we've dealt with, Matt and I wrote a book called Radical Companies, and in part what we were trying to explore was, how do we understand this from the root of work, which is really people. And I've come to realize that it's actually a little deeper. It's actually back to life. There's a neuroscience researcher in the University of Southern California by the name of Antonio Damasio. And Damasio discovered that we can't make decisions without involving our feeling systems.
Right.
We thought that when we were making rational decisions, that they were purely rational. In reality, the rational sits on top of the felt sense of things of the world. And so when we decide to make organizational decisions, we're not doing them dispassionately, though we think we are, right?
Right.
And we say that we are, but in reality, we're not. And so part of what we've learned is that life itself requires that there is meaning and belonging in our environments. And so often we get managed out of both.
Mm.
We get managed out of meaning by the fact that it's just a job, come and do it. We don't have time to tell you all about it because, you know, other layers of management knows what's going on. You're just going to get some basic details here and just get it done, right? You don't need to be intimately familiar with what's going on. That's somebody else's job.
Your manager may not even know.
Your
Why?
manager may not even
He's
know.
saying, "Hey, move that box from here to there, or else."
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's an error of information, and the results when they go back up, they go, "Oh, well, we didn't want it blue, we wanted it red," and it's that kind of ping pong. Have you run into that, by the way, in your job?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's almost constant. One of the things that's nice about being a site reliability engineer is you are frequently able to be both the source of information and then the fixer of information.
No.
So if you're able to notice user behavior through like logs or something, you can go ahead yourself and improve the user experience, you know, by yourself. But what you're describing, where you have this very long process through multiple people and information being lost, and you know, maybe not the right implementation being rolled out, or something that doesn't provide user value being rolled out. Like, yes, I see that very, very, very frequently.
Yeah. Have you read David Marquet's books? He's got 2 books now.
No, but they sound like great recommendations.
Yeah, the one is called Turning the Ship Around,
Mm.
where he was assigned to a submarine that was the crappiest crew, the crappiest everything in the Navy, when he was expecting to get the most modern, you know, latest and things, and he turned it around. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he turned it around by expressing his intent. You know, so he would say, "Hey, we want to go, you know, what do they call it when they come out of the water?
Surface.
We want to surface, and then the details were left to everybody else, and that made a huge difference. And the communications, like you mentioned, made a huge, huge difference. So he was, rather than telling people what to do, he would say, "Hey, I need to get this thing to surface."
Right.
And why? Because we need fresh air or whatever. And that seemed to
Yeah.
make a big difference. His latest book is called Language as Leadership, or Leadership of Language. I don't know, one of those two. And it's also very good in terms of practices and stuff like that. So I recommend Dave Marquet highly. But you run into that. So what kind of problems, not problems, what kind of areas did you run into that are problematic, that, oh shit, this is an obvious fix. So how do I fix it? What kinds of, those kinds of problems have you run into?
Right. I think I could do a really good loop of, you know, the technical that led into the cultural.
Yeah.
So one of the best ways that you can manage an IT environment is to be able to make small, small meaningful changes that are well tested, that can be version controlled and deployed frequently. You know, kind of like summarizing DevOps right there.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes into the DoD in many areas. Some are still using control review boards and documents in order to submit a change request to do anything, and it takes a very long time. It could take a week or two in order to make a very simple change, and it's the opposite of resiliency,
Yeah.
as opposed to on one hand you have a very manual process that takes a long time, and on the other hand you have a automated process that is more secure because everything is being version controlled through Git and your deployment methodologies. And it can take a lot of work on the people level to get something like that rolled out. It's allowed within the government, but many times you may run into leaders or security offices that may see that and just right off the bat forbid it. It's a knee-jerk reaction, just going, no, we can't do that, we won't do that. And it ends up harming the mission, period. You can achieve all of those results in a modern way. It's just there's this person level, and then it gets into why is there a knee-jerk reaction? What's going on there? And in many ways, people within the DoD will get indoctrinated into a certain form of fear culture, essentially, where there's no psychological safety. Everything you say is politicized, and if you say the wrong thing, I mean, someone will either passive aggressively kind of attack you or try and make you look less intelligent in front of a group of people, or try and say this is impossible, this is going to harm mission, and where what's the root of that? And it's not like these people are bad. They are trying to do what they think is right. However, with this fear culture, it can hinder progress and slow things down. So with that, it can be wise for leadership to step in and make it very clear that there's something wrong there and they should probably seek help. And that is such a difficult problem to navigate. If you tell someone you need to go to therapy, that is like a punch in the face most of the time, from a social context. And from there, it's also like, why? I mean, we see a doctor once a year for a checkup. We see a dentist once a year for checkup. We're not seeing a therapist once a year for checkup. We only see therapists if, not my idea. If you're, crazy, or if your life is falling apart. But that's not true. It very much can be preventative maintenance. And especially in the, very fast-paced, high-stakes, arena of the DoD, it's an excellent idea. If you have the ability to go and do that, go do that. And you can help yourself escape from that fear culture, regardless of what the rest of your leadership may be doing.
And what if? Sorry, go ahead.
Do they want to escape that fear culture? I mean, the Navy, anybody with weapons is supposed to be always on the lookout, always looking around, for that threat. And so would you want them to, and would I want them to, and do they want to escape that?
I think that's a really, really excellent point. This was several years back when I was serving in Okinawa. My sergeant at the time, he may be a warrant officer now, Jarrell Dennis, had sat me down, and we were having a good mentorship session, and he told me, the enemy is out there, not in here. I had a confrontation with a peer, and it's not like we were brawling or anything, just a difference in ideas. And that applies here as well. When you are doing IT, you are going to be surrounded by your teammates. They may be different companies and organizations, and there may be a political barrier to navigate there. But in the end, we're Americans. We're trying to protect and defend the nation. We're trying to give taxpayers, their money's worth. Most of the time. I won't get into the upper business side because that'll get hairy. But I think a lot of people don't even necessarily know they are in that fear culture, or that life can be different. Many times people will just kind of get into that fear culture, and it's like, I need to take care of myself. I need to hunker down. I need to cover my butt. And they won't even see that there's an issue, and it's totally logical and reasonable, and it's something that human beings will do when exposed to that systemic problem.
Systemic is the key word.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, Timothy, I wonder, do you think, because another thing that we talk about that's critical, we believe, is that of transparency, which transparency at the human level, not just transparency about the data information, right? the business or the mission or the product or the data, the actual tangible thing, but about me, about you, about us, and having that conversation about fear, having that conversation about what's happening in my life, what's happening in your life, what's happening to us as a community, as a group. Do you think that's something that would work in the environment that you're describing?
Yes. You do have to be careful in engagement in how you deliver the message. One of my favorite books, Thinking in Bets, within one of the first few paragraphs, they discuss when you lose a hand of poker and you're a professional poker player, you are going to want to know how and why that hand didn't go your way if you want to be better at it. At the same time, it's a very emotional game. You're playing with money. You're losing money. You may just want to rant and rave. Some people just aren't ready. They're absolutely not in a brain space to have those kinds of conversations. And they may never be. And that's just how life goes. We could just try and be supportive and protect ourselves first in the sense of, like, if someone is being truly negative and toxic, take care of you, and then as best as you can try and take care of that other person, whether it's a leader, or a teammate, or whatever have you. But the more we can have these candid conversations and break down this fear culture, the better result we're going to get within the DoD.
Absolutely. Do you think that applies just as well in private industry?
Absolutely. The one caveat that I will have with either industry is that sometimes in being the person to kind of broker this idea, you will trigger other people's shadow, where they will see you behaving in a way that they would like to, but feels threatening, and they may retaliate in a negative way. So with some people, like, having that conversation can make a conflict, even if you have a perfect delivery. But
So
long answer. Yes, both work.
No, yeah, no, it's a good answer. I think that's true. I wonder, because to me, this is getting to the meaty part of the conversation.
Fair.
Because the reality is, for me at least, that when we're dealing with individuals and an environment that traditionally does not deal with individuals as human beings, but as roles, as positions, as titles, that we're talking about a totally different paradigm. We're talking about dealing with people for the first time in many organizations. In most organizations, I believe, we're dealing with roles, positions, titles, and we never actually talk about the person. I mean, we might as individuals with one another, have our coffee chat or our lunch chat or our getting into the office chat, but we never actually, as a community within these organizations, talk about ourselves in that way, right? That's private stuff. We leave that outside the door, right? The feelings, the emotions, what's happening to us in our daily lives. So how do we transition? You said the first thing you said of those three things was culture.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change that culture from ignoring the human being to focusing on the human being? Is that a fair question? Is that what we should be doing? And if so, how do we do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I will take a page from the armed forces as a whole, and specifically like high performing teams and groups. Little bit writing on the coattails of Simon Sinek, who does an excellent presentation over like what makes a team of Navy SEALs, and it does come down to culture. There's a there's a quad chart that he goes over where there's high trust and high performance, and you would rather have someone who has high trust and mid performance over someone who has low trust and high performance. So in many ways it is teaching leadership and management how to greater foster trust in those environments, because we are like I'll call back to what you were saying earlier. We are making rational decisions that are layered over emotional decisions. If there's a lack of trust, you're going to have a hard time making a rational decision. So it's a leadership driven effort, using best practice psychology and business management techniques. It's really just prioritizing those things and then living them. Culture is a lagging indicator of what we do day to day. So taking these concepts and living them is the way. You could start at any time. It's just starting.
I wonder, you said teaching.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was
just going to say that.
Gentleman's shuffle.
No, he's doing this on purpose. I know.
Okay, so you indicated, as you were talking about it, you indicated a 2x2, where trust on one side and performance on the other, I think.
Yes.
And you said, I'd rather have one or the other. And what you really want is high trust, high performance. And what Jose was talking about is trust comes from knowing that the other guy has two kids, but he has the pain on the right side that doesn't refuse to go away. And instead of grass, it's a sand, he's going to replace it. That's where trust comes from. It's knowing who you're dealing with as the who. That's why Jose kind of pushed you to who are you? Who are you at the beginning? And that's where meaning comes from. That's where belonging comes from. So I may be dealing with a guy that has two kids and this and that, a lot similar, very similar to me, and says, I like to kill chickens with my bare hands. I go, oh, I don't want to belong to that group. And so, but how do you bring, I think the question was, how do you bring that one way or the other into this triangle of culture, technology, and now trust?
I'm going to jump in, Timothy, because what I heard you say was teaching. And one of our guests a few episodes ago was from Seoul, Colombia, and Seoul stands for self-organized learning experiences. And one of the things that I loved about that conversation and that topic was that when we take the approach that we're going to learn together but not teach,
Mm,
that we're going to take the approach of there's something we want to do, and if one of us comes in and tells us what it is that we're going to do, then I'm not really learning anymore. I'm being
sure.
taught.
Yeah.
And that automatically sets us on a different path of me saying in my mind going, well, what is it you want me to do now? What is it, why are
Yeah.
you telling me this? There's got to be a point of advantage for you if you're the one that wants me to do something. And so this level of trust, I think, is diminished in an environment of teaching.
That's fair. I think that makes sense. I can empathize with that really heavily. I'm an autodidact. I teach myself. I have no college to speak of, but I've been in the DoD IT realm for 16 years, still relevant. And minimum training just to check boxes. So I get the autodidact part where people are teaching themselves. The doing it within a group is very interesting. I had never considered that before. Um, Most of the time what I see is people will be teaching themselves, but it will be very isolated and there won't be a community around it. um,
Exactly.
which that's
That,
that's
that,
very interesting.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. So when Sanjay said this and described it to us, I thought, because where the experience comes from is, I don't remember the professor, but I'll tell you this quick story because I
Mm,
think Timothy, uh, what got your gears just spinning right now, will be helped by what I'm about to describe, which is professors doing research on teaching and learning takes a touchscreen computer, knocks out a hole in the back of their school, and puts it out into a poor neighborhood in India.
mm.
Walks around the building a couple of days later, sees kids touching that, and asks them, "What are you doing? What is that thing?" "We don't know. It just showed up one day." And he says, "Oh, interesting. What do you do with it?" He says, "We don't know." Comes back a week later. They're figuring some stuff out. He says, "What are you guys doing?" "Well, we figured out we could ask questions. We figured out we could do this. We figured out we could be doing that." And these kids were excited as hell.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And what he realized is that they were supporting each other and teaching each other with stuff, not from I need to teach you this, but guess what I just found out,
Yeah, yeah, no,
right?
that's a really good point. Fostering community is a pattern that I've noticed exists throughout areas that perform really really well. Software development itself, we are trying to solve problems for human beings. So there's a community aspect there. um, there's you know teams of people that are working together in order to write that software, and then teams of people that are getting that software out to people to solve problems. It's all communal in the end. The
Exactly.
macro really mimics the micro, and that's really awesome with teaching and hearing that.
Yeah.
Software, I guess it's atypical in the sense that it's more communal based. And I worked at a company that self-learning was a big thing, but not self-learning for me. So self-learning for a group. Sometimes we would ask a question, knowing the answer that you came up with, to see what other answers came out. And that's very powerful. It's very
Yeah.
powerful.
If it's okay, there's one thing that I wanted to just loop on that I didn't know where it fit well into the conversation, but if I may.
Yeah.
um, there's another part with getting over getting through fear culture, especially communally. um, and that's flat out courage.
Yes.
Having courage to be vulnerable within a group of people, which is absolutely terrifying for, I think, the vast majority of people. Because when you are vulnerable, I mean, there's the potential for you to be hurt. And that's in my head one of the only ways to really get people to have trust is by trust begetting trust.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you said it right there. It's really about someone opening up and saying, I'm going to be vulnerable. And someone else goes, well, if he can be vulnerable, I'm going to be vulnerable. And it starts the chain, right?
Yeah,
It is about somebody stepping up, and it doesn't have to be a traditional leader.
true. It can be bottom up.
It can be bottom up. It can just be anyone who's willing to step up and do that. We said we were going to keep this one short. It's already 41 minutes.
Let me add one more thing. The painter, Henry Matisse, said creativity takes courage. And that's what you just said.
Exactly.
Because it makes you vulnerable. And what you learn your whole life is don't say that. Don't say that because people can use it against you. And I imagine in the military, that's way up there.
Yeah, it falls back to fear culture. If you like say,
Exactly.
why are we doing this? You can get someone will say like, oh, you're dumb, don't ask that, and then there that goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, what's the first language you learned?
If you count it, I would say PowerShell. The DoD is very Windows heavy, so PowerShell was my first, and then I think I did Ansible after that, and then Terraform, Python, and then like bits and pieces of different like database oriented languages like SQL and whatever.
So we got a guy that knows Python.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, some bash.
Yeah, both Jose and I are nerds, I guess.
Hell yeah. I'm about it.
Don't be so vulnerable, Matt.
Oh, you're gonna use that against me.
Matt, do you want to introduce our next guest? And
next week we have Neil. I think it's pronounced Flagging, and I think because it starts with a P, but it's German, so I can pronounce it any way I want, and I'm going to be wrong. In any case, we're going to talk about overcoming command and control management for good. And Neil has been at this for a long time. We did a lot of research on his work when we were writing our first book. And by the way, that's our first book right there, Radical Companies. And if you want to buy it, we won't have anything against it. And this is the one that's coming up, is in detail. But it's thick too. It's a lot of pages. But anyways, we know what Neil is doing. We know his work and stuff like that. So
looking forward to talking.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Well, Timothy, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought that was nice, getting into the details, understanding what makes you tick, and understanding the work that you are doing and have done, and the direction that you think both the DoD and private industry needs to go. And certainly those of us who are radical, sounds to me like are in alignment with what you're talking about.
Yes. And
so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I enjoyed it as well, very much.
Awesome. Have a good one, guys. See you next week.
There we go.